And this is actually a question that I ask in my life as an editor as well, is like where are you hiding in this? Especially in poetry, because that's the gift of poetry is we can hide a little bit. In this style of writing, you're not hiding at all. Like you're like, I'm giving you everything.
For more than 2 decades, I have written in a diary almost every single day. And guess what? I saved them all. Each week, I will be reading from these archives and getting to know myself from the lens of my 10, 16, 25, and 36-year-old self. We'll explore big topics such as body image, queerness, divorce, addiction, mental health, and friendship. I'll read cringy poems and attempt to find compassion for the painful tenderness of my younger self. Join the drama of me and my guests as we explore our boy-crazy, closeted, angsty selves, one stupid page at a time.
Hello, welcome everybody to another episode of the Angsty Pod. I'm so glad you're here, and we've got a very special guest today. I sort of gave you guys a teaser of the guests that I'm chatting with on the podcast today, and would love to welcome my friend Kristina Percy to the Angsty Pod. Welcome, Kristina.
Thanks, Yoda.
So glad you're here.
Me
We
too.
have a bond because we both found ourselves in a writing group, and we're one of a few of the only Canadians in the room. So,
hmm
where are you in Canada?
I'm on Vancouver Island on the West Coast, but I actually went to school to university in London. So you and
Oh,
I know a lot of the same
yes.
neighborhoods.
Yes, we figured that out when we had a nice little coffee chat after we realized that we had
hmm
had some places in common. So I was very glad to make a friend in a big writing group that
Yeah,
sometimes can
huge.
feel sometimes it can feel a little bit scary to start talking about all these personal details of your life as we do when we write poetry in front of like a big group of people. So I was always happy to be like have a little closer connection with someone in that group. So I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today because you have an amazing book of poems that's out that I have read and read and read again that we're going to talk about today. And honestly, just excited to hear you read from some of your diaries. Now, you're not actually reading from diaries today. Tell me what you're reading from today.
So I write emails to myself and to my kids, although not so much anymore. I feel like it's been quite a while since I wrote emails to my kids, but my writing practice is to send myself snippets via email. So I have this very long chain that Gmail doesn't really know what to do with because it's all the same subject line of all of my little writing bits. But I did that for the first few years when my kids were little too. I would send them emails of like, this is kind of what we've been doing, or like happy birthday emails or that kind of thing. And so there's a period in there when I was also sending them intermittent emails about some of the experiences that I was having with what ended up being postpartum anxiety.
Hmm. Was there something about the act of something digital versus something like writing something down on paper, or was it just the fact that you were like a new mom and it was just too
Yeah, it was
busy?
mostly just convenience.
Mm.
I always had my phone, and so and that's true now too. When I write, I'm not in the habit of carrying around like a physical book of like a physical journal. So it's easier for me, and I can keep things a bit more together by keeping it all digital, I think. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I love that. I love that we're getting something a little different on the Angsty Pod today because normally we have people read from diaries, very angsty diary entries from these sort of like, you know, glitter covered books that we kept under our beds in our teen years. So you're going to be
Mhm.
reading from some of those emails that you wrote to yourself and to your kids between early 2019 and sort of midsummer 2020, which
Yes. Yeah.
obviously a lot of other things going on at that time,
Yeah.
pandemic time. And let's get into some of these emails that you wrote. I'm so curious to hear I have no idea really what to expect from them, but I know that you are going to be talking about your experience with postpartum anxiety. So just wanted to give listeners a little heads up about that in case this is something that you're perhaps experiencing as very tender right now. This might not be the episode for you, but if I know Kristina and I do a little bit, Kristina is going to make this feel like a very beautiful, tender, and open space for us to explore this kind of heavier subject matter together.
I think the first email that I'd like to read is from March 18th of 2019. And so at this point, my daughter is 3 months old, and my son is has just turned two. He's just like not even a month past two. So E is my son and A is my daughter. Dear E. So this is two. Honestly, most of your first 2 years were pretty smooth for me and your dad. You ate and slept well nearly from birth. We never had to worry much about biting or hitting or throwing. You were generally inclined to listen when we set rules, and you didn't really whine and handled many of life's toddler-sized disappointments with admirable aplomb. Because parenting you was easy, we were inclined to think that we were actually just that good at it. And no matter how many times I told people, yeah, we got pretty lucky, a small part of me did genuinely believe that we were doing something better than most parents. The fact that I couldn't quite put my finger on what exactly it was that we had mastered should have been my first indication that we had, in fact, mastered nothing. Then, in the span of a couple of months, you became a big brother. Your dad and all your grandparents were around all the time for weeks, and then suddenly mostly gone again, and you turned two. You run everywhere. You want to touch everything. You talk almost nonstop and not just repeating what other people say, although you do that too. You use words you know in your own sentences that once translated actually make sense. You're so opinionated, so energetic, so alive. I, on the other hand, am exhausted. I want to let you explore and be curious, fall and get up and test your limits and find that you can do more than you thought. I also want to teach you to be polite and kind and, yes, tidy, which you have very little desire to learn at this point. You've adopted the incredibly uncharming habit of throwing your food or cup on the floor towards the end of meals, and it's infuriating. I know it's a phase, and I know reacting to it makes it worse, but good grief, it is frustrating to have to clean up a handful of rice off the floor while you yell, "No, you will not help." Half the time we bring down the markers to color, you end up scribbling purposefully on the floor, and despite having you wipe it up, you're just as likely as not to do it the next time. You pause and get a look in your eyes as if you're about to tell the funniest joke, and then you do the exact thing I've just asked you not to do. And for a second, just one, I am enraged. I need you to know that what you've just done is not okay. I forget that you're two, not even or barely, and that you're not doing it out of malice, and that you don't understand why it bothers me. I just need you to know how angry I am. Most times, I catch myself. But the whining will be the end of me. I secretly scoffed the first time your grandmother told me that babies' cries weren't annoying, but it's true. When you were little and could only cry to tell me you needed something, it was almost never annoying, just heartbreaking. But now that your language has developed to the point that you can understand pretty much everything, there are times when it's nearly unbearable. We've made some slow progress on saying please and thank you, and I try in my more patient moments to give you better words. And yet I regularly find myself feeling that I must make you realize how ridiculous you're being to have a meltdown over not being able to get the wrinkles out of your car mat. Of course, this is futile at best and harmful at worst. I know that even as I listen to myself make a particularly unhelpful statement like, "What now?" But imagine me close to shouting this into your face. Not a very flattering parenting moment, to say the least. I suppose the only redeeming aspect of this interaction was that I didn't yell what I wanted to, which was just shut up and get over it. Your dad and I asked each other in turn whether we're expecting too much from you, which of course we are. Listening to you, watching you, especially next to A, It's so easy to forget how little you still are. We expect you to be a big brother, but many days you're still just a tiny person trying to figure out how to interact with the world. Parenting a 2-year-old is enchanting 1 minute and impossible the next. It's worse. It's work every second of every day, awake or asleep, sick or healthy. Thank you for being patient with me. I'm learning too. Love, Mama.
Wow. How long has it been since you read this email?
Well, I read it in preparation for chatting with you today, but I didn't go back and read them much until a couple of years ago. We were traveling, and so I needed to go get some like frequent flyer information for the kids. So I went into their emails because I'd signed up with them, and I found one of the emails that I'll read later, which was I'd forgotten that I sent it, and it was way more honest than I remember being in the emails.
Yeah.
And that was the point where I actually went back and like pulled out all of them, because not all of the emails that I sent were, about this particular experience, but I pulled out the ones that were in this time frame and read them kind of back to back, and I could like watch myself
Mm.
descend into this rage death pit. um and I remember at the time feeling like I was doing a pretty good job of not letting people know what was going on.
Mm.
And reading these emails, it was like incredibly clear what was happening. Now, I wasn't saying these things to other people necessarily, but I have my doubts now about how well I was actually keeping this secret, even though I thought I was, being quite circumspect about it.
By the secret, do you mean that you were suffering from postpartum anxiety?
Yeah, yeah, I didn't tell anyone what I was feeling for a year and a half.
Mm.
And it felt very, it felt dangerous at the time
Mm.
to admit that, because I was worried that it would that someone would hear that and think that I couldn't parent
Yeah.
my kids
Mhm.
and that they weren't safe with me. And I think that the ironic thing is there probably were times when they weren't safe with
Yeah.
me. Um, and if I had been able to talk about it earlier, um, it would have helped. And yet that felt like it would be
Yeah.
the riskiest thing to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is certainly a aspect of postpartum life, the good, the bad,
Hmm.
and the really bad, that we do not really hear about, but when you do hear about it, I feel like most, at least women that I know, I haven't spoken to very many men about this, but at least the women that I know just all they do is nod. Like they just nod in agreement of like, yeah, of course that makes sense, everything you just said. That the idea of admitting what was really going on, it feels so impossible because of what the repercussions of that could be. But like the only thing that is scarier is the risk of like not getting better
Yeah.
and not having any sense of ease. And I think, I mean, I'm overcome right now with the same feeling that I felt when I was reading your book on my couch, which was just like, wow, this is going to help so many people because of just naming that like one of the questions I ask a lot of guests on this podcast is if you could go back in time and tell that version of you that wrote that something, like what would you tell them? And I feel like you've kind of already answered that question, but maybe there is a more maybe not. Maybe you haven't answered that question based on like sort of what you just told me. But if you could go back and like respond to that email as yourself now, or
Hmm.
continue that email, write a PS to that email, what do you think you would say to, Kristina in 2019 with a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old?
I think I would tell myself that being angry is not being angry the way that I was is not a moral failing, because that's what it felt like at the time, was that it was
Mm.
some sort of indictment of who I was as a person and especially as a mother, that like a good mother would not be angry at her kids like this. And it it never occurred to me, like, before I had my son, we did, like a baby class. And so they talk about, obviously they talk about childbirth and like all the like mechanics of raising a tiny little human, but they also talk about, or at least they did in ours, they talk about postpartum depression, and they talk about, like the baby blues and the really um like challenging crying that can kind of like set your teeth on edge. But it was all in the context of feeling sad. And I didn't feel sad right at this time. I felt furious. And that felt different
Mm.
and like it was somehow my fault. Like it couldn't have been the same mechanisms that would cause someone to feel depressed. I didn't understand that that could also translate to anger and anxiety, and like those are all just different sides of um the same issue. And so I think, and I don't know how receptive I would have been to anyone telling me anything. Like I think about that a lot, when because I do feel like I was unprepared for like the the extent of the feelings that I have as a mom.
Sure. Like you almost felt like you were doing, like you're like, I'm doing this whole postpartum depression thing wrong. 'Cause
Yes, absolutely. That's what it felt like. I was like, okay, well,
yeah.
like I know if I'm sad, that's
Mm.
not okay, but like that's an acceptable
Yeah.
presentation of this.
Yes, yes, yes.
But rage was not in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Rage was like, well, that can't be right because I love my kids and
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be taking care of them, not like, yelling at them because they dropped their rights on the floor.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I hear you. Yeah. That can be, that's a whole other layer of this. We hear a lot about the relief that comes after either a diagnosis or just saying the thing out loud, but we don't hear enough, I think, about the hill it took to climb to get to being able to like name it out loud. And I think, I mean, for me, that's what a lot of your writing that I've read of yours like has been about. It's been about like that feeling and I think part of your journey now feels like how do I in my work but also just in my life be a sounding board, a safe space, an ear for someone else who's in that position, which is a lot of pressure. Like that's a lot of pressure when you start talking publicly about something that's been really, really hard for you, that other people that have never felt seen before in their life in that are going to just gravitate towards you because of how you make it feel like it might be okay, right? You make it feel like, hey, if
mm,
you feel inexplicably angry at your child that you also love, it's going to be okay,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and one of the first times that I had that, it was just like a flash
Mm.
of understanding, was Mina Devon wrote a piece in the New York Times called "The Rage Mothers Don't Talk About," and in it she goes through in great detail um, her experience with postpartum rage with her son. And I remember reading that and crying because I felt it felt so familiar. And for a little while, I felt like I could hold on to that and use it as a bit of a like buffer of like other people have experienced this too. So it can't be just me, but maybe it's just me and like this small cohort of terrible moms. And but I do think like that was the first time reading that piece where I even had it even felt like a possibility that maybe it maybe there was a way that it wouldn't always feel like this.
Mm,
Because for a long time it did feel kind of like it felt kind of hopeless and like I had resigned myself to this like permanent angry tense
mm.
existence that I was like, well, maybe when they're 18.
All right. So, what do you have next for us, Kristina?
Okay, so the next email I have is from September the 20th of 2019. So that's what, like 6 months later. I've never read these out loud before, so I'm curious how I'm going to do on this one. Because I hear myself, I hear the desperation that I felt in this one, especially. Um, and the subject line that I used, I think, is really telling because I wrote, I never used to be an angry person. And I think that's the first time that I kind of like name that as an identity in these emails, which feels very heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, take your time reading if you need to take some pauses. No
Thank you.
worries. I often do when I'm getting through those really tough ones. We're here
Yeah.
for you.
All right, here we go. Dear E, the last couple of days were hard. Being 2.5 is hard. Having a baby sister is hard. It's hard when there's only me at home and your dad's on call overnight and everyone's tired and it's raining outside, but we still need groceries. Sometimes the day unravels almost before it starts. And yesterday and the day before, they were days like that. You seem fine while I nurse A in your room, and then as soon as we go out into our morning, disaster. I talk about getting breakfast ready, and you scream that you don't want breakfast. You want to play. Then, when I turn to go into the kitchen, I'm hungry, wailing, hanging from your high chair, banging the walls. I pick you up, and I know it's too rough. Maybe that's when I bump your arm on the door frame by accident. I can't remember. More wailing. We finally eat. Everyone is starving, except maybe A, who's just a normal level of hungry. The last few minutes are always tense. You play with your food, but insist you're not done. Finally, I decide you are done. I take your plate away. Luckily, you don't get a chance to throw anything, but instead you yell. I clean your hands and face with difficulty, put you down, and you race around the living room loudly, pulling out toys but not playing with them, threatening to throw things while looking right at me to make sure I'm watching. A is the slowest eater, still true. And I sit with her at the table another 10 minutes at least. And then when she's done, I put her in the red playpen to attempt to clean up the disaster that is our kitchen and dining table. In between cleaning up, I am shouting at you to stop. Stop screaming in A's face. Don't throw your blocks. Leave the damn laundry basket alone. Finally, I give up, but because it's already time for Aiden to have a nap, I can disguise it and I tell you we're going to watch TV while she sleeps. This buys me scant minutes of obedience. You say you want to watch Thomas the Train. I put it on and you cry, not that one. And all I want to say is, then we're not watching anything, but I can't because I just want you to be quiet. So I change it to Real City Heroes and put A to bed. And finally, for an hour, we sit in a miraculously companionable, mostly silence, while I fold laundry and you fold laundry, air quotes, stuffed cloths in your little red picnic basket. But then A wakes up and she needs to eat again, and you need to have a snack. No, I not want a snack, and we all need to get dressed and get outside. I manhandle you into your clothes. I go to change A's diaper, and you are clinging and whining and trying to hang off the change table. I push you away, and you cry harder, harder, because again, it's too rough. I think I managed to keep my voice even, but still, it's mean. I know this while it's happening. I can feel it. And yet, I don't stop myself because for those few moments of screaming, sobbing, thrashing, I don't even want to type this. I don't want to be your mom. I don't want to be anyone's mom. I just want to get dressed and leave in a reasonable amount of time, like a normal person, like I used to be able to do anytime I wanted. We go out, finally. You're on your bike, but inevitably I end up pulling you off because you meander across an intersection without watching where you're going. There's more crying as I stuff you into the stroller and kicking that ends in me with a death grip on your ankles, stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, rage whispering at you that if you would just stop kicking, I could let go of your feet. Eventually, we come home and it's too soon, despite being an infuriating, futile excursion. In the hour or so before your nap, we eat lunch, breakfast antics repeated, only with less patience from me and impending exhaustion from both you and A. You don't want to go to sleep. Of course you don't. There are so many tears by this point that it's shocking you have any left. And in desperation, I leave A in the little hanging chair just to get you in bed sooner, where you are asleep nearly instantly. Small graces. By the time I nurse A, put her down, and clean up after lunch, it's halfway through my best case scenario for child-free time. Do I fold laundry or stuff diapers with the TV on in the background? I know I make no attempt to start something for dinner, although this makes things so much more challenging later. A wakes up early, so do you, and I could scream with frustration. But I'm apparently the grown-up in the house, so instead I just seethe silently. At some point over these 2 days, I know I have sworn and yelled and grabbed your hands too forcefully. I have squeezed your little body between my knees in an attempt to keep you still while my hands are full. I have snatched from you. More than once, I saw in your face what I think might have been fear as I abandoned whatever I was doing to race into the living room and hold you too tightly on the couch in an arching, shrieking farce of a time in. I never used to be an angry person, and yet now I find myself enraged all the time. For heaven's sake, you're barely 2.5. I have 30 years on you, and I can barely keep myself together in the face of what? Loud noises, a disinclination to follow directions. How is it possible that such a tiny person, a person I love beyond all reason, can incite such madness, both anger and insanity? I know in these moments I am failing you, not the other way around, and I am so, so sorry, my love. I want to say it will never happen again, but I've said this before, and it has. So maybe instead I must hope for marginal improvement, an extra 5 minutes of tolerance for an ear-splitting, unprovoked scream, or gentler hands, even when you're refusing for the third time to put on pants and we really do need to leave now. I will try every day. I will try again. Love, Mama.
Hmm.
Oh, that was a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I often experience other people's writing as I feel there's a holding back. I often even say I read an essay that I love, there's often a part of me, it might be my editing brain, but it also might just be my brain that's like been through a ton of stuff and a lot of therapy where I
Mhm,
say, "Oh, I feel like they were honest, but not quite fully honest. Like I feel like they they cut something out of that they didn't want us to know, maybe."
mhm,
And this is actually a question that I ask in my life as an editor as well, is like where are you hiding in this? Especially in poetry, because that's the gift of
mhm,
poetry is we can hide a little bit. In this style of writing, you're not hiding at all. Like you're like, I'm giving you everything. And first you're giving it to this email, and then now you're giving it to us. And I'm wondering if there was a conscious choice that you made at some point to be like, I'm going to be really honest. about what this has been like for me? Has it been gradual? Did it happen all of a sudden?
It was kind of stepped, I think.
Mm.
So once I admitted how I'd been feeling and I started taking medication almost immediately after that, which helped a ton, like
Mm.
night and day. Um, and then maybe like 6 weeks later, probably about that, I I posted about it publicly. So at that point, I had, and it honestly did feel like, I don't know, waking up from a nightmare, like coming out of a fog. Like it was stunning how significant the change was in my mood and my, patience and just my like general ability to be around my kids.
Yeah.
So anyway, so like 6 weeks and I posted about the fact that I had experienced postpartum anxiety and I was treating it. And I talked about that fairly openly and regularly and then I started writing about it. Um and for years there was the the worst day of the entire experience, which was the day before um, I ended up telling my best friend how I'd be feeling. I didn't talk about that day. So that was the piece that I held back. And it took me longer than that even to tell my husband. So the only person that knew was my best friend who basically just like caught the entirety of my,
Yeah.
confession of what had been happening and how bad
Mm.
it had gotten. Um, so that was the part that I held back
Mhm.
for a long time, and I'm still trying to figure out how to share that. Like I haven't written about that day explicitly. I don't have any poems about that day itself, because it feels like the one that was like the worst indictment of
Yeah.
me in that experience, right?
The
So
closest you came to
yeah,
something
yeah,
scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe this is a good you're cracking open the window a little bit just by mentioning that here today as like the thing that you maybe haven't prepared internally to write about yet. And that's okay.
mhm,
Like we all have the right to hold back whatever. There's two really heartbreaking things in this email that one is you use the word mean to describe yourself, which just literally like brought tears to my eyes because like I don't think anybody who knows you or loves you, or has even met you once would ever describe you as mean. But the fact that that's like how you felt in those moments and a belief that you truly held about yourself is like so hard, especially when you're speaking about motherhood. Like nobody wants to describe themselves as mean or
yeah,
like so that word felt very specific. Another heartbreaking detail was like this list of things. And by the way, we still need groceries. Like during this process of you unraveling and sinking, use the word descending earlier, descending into this hole of rage, you still had to just get up every day and be a mom,
yeah,
which,
yeah.
wow.
You know what? I actually, looking back on it now, I actually think that I can look at that and I can see it as proof of how hard I was trying and how
Mm,
much I do love them and did love them at the time, that in spite of everything and in spite of how little I was enjoying like the day-to-day tasks of being their mom, I did it.
yeah.
And I was using like every ounce of energy and like capacity that I had to keep doing it because there was
Yeah.
nothing that I could conceive of that was like a worse punishment than if I had been like, I can't do this anymore, I need help. And the outcome of that had been, okay, but that means that you don't get to be their parent anymore.
Yeah.
You don't get to be their mom.
Yeah.
And like, so, you know, I, what like the number of things that you have to do every day when you have little kids is incredible. And it's, you know, it's such a cliche to be like, you know, what does a stay-at-home mom do all day? And like you
Yeah.
look back and you're like, well, I didn't actually, other than keeping these two little people alive, I didn't actually accomplish anything. But I did keep them alive. They are still here. We are all fed.
Yeah.
We are all dressed, kind of, you know, we're all like, we went outside and it's so
It's such a big task.
it is, and it's relentless. It's I think that that was the thing that I felt the most in like those early motherhood years was like how relentless all of it
Yeah.
was. And there was never a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never a break.
Yeah. And I mean, not only keeping them alive, but I mean, keeping yourself alive during those
Yeah.
the hardest of the days is, I mean, as someone who has, experienced pretty intense clinical depression for most of my life, that is a thing that like I went to bed some nights being like, where is my trophy? Seriously, I kept myself alive
Yeah.
today. And like nobody cares. Literally
Yes.
nobody has even recognized that like I got out
Hmm.
of bed today. Do you know what that took?
Dear E and A, there are some things I'm afraid to tell your dad. Yesterday was hard. Your dad was late, and I texted back saying I was ready to drop kick the pair of you. It wasn't a great choice of language, obviously. He came home, rushed and looking panicked. We were eating dinner. He asked if everything was okay. Later, he told me he had been so worried. He didn't say it, but I think he was worried I might hurt you. I wish I could have said to him confidently that that would never happen. But the thing is, I am so angry all the time over the most insignificant things. A, squirming around relentlessly while I'm trying to change your diaper. E, falling all over the place as I try to get him dressed. Screaming, whining the same question for the 100th time after it has been answered for the 99th. Doors slammed, light switches turned on, off, on, Lego dumped all over the floor and immediately abandoned. E grabbing whatever toy A happens to be holding, often not even a real toy, despite being engrossed in a puzzle until the exact minute she walks into the same room. A putting every tiny, sharp, or paper-based object in her mouth at every opportunity. It is infuriating. I never would have called myself an angry person, but it turns out I am a very angry mom. I'm afraid to say this to your dad, who is, I think, neither an angry person nor an angry parent. He comes to your defense each time, and while I love this for you, how wonderful to know your father will protect you, I hate it for myself. He tells me they're just kids, and with those words, I am at fault. All the frustration and the banality of spending your day with small children and their ridiculous demands is irrelevant, invisible. Your grandma reminisces every time we see her about how much she enjoyed her kids when they were toddlers, and I nearly drown in the guilt that I'm not enjoying this, hardly at all. Mostly I'm annoyed. Quite often I am in an absolute rage. Your dad is right, you are just kids, and I'm sure all of the things you do are normal. And no matter how many times I have told you not to spit, to clean up the damn Lego, or I'm going to throw it away, to stop climbing on the couch, it would never, ever be an excuse to hurt you. Knowing that is one thing, but it makes it no less irritating and I am no less angry. Maybe I should be. And what I hear from your dad when he says they're just kids, even though I know he doesn't mean it, is that this shouldn't be a problem. That there are other moms, better moms, who can handle it. And why the hell can't I? I'm afraid to admit that there are times when I can't. Times when I grab your arm too hard, when I clamp my hand over your mouth, when I'm secretly vindicated hearing you cry because it serves you right for pounding on the walls when I just told you to stop. I've never hit either of you, but I think about it. I wonder if it would scare you into something resembling submission. I briefly wonder if it would be worth it. So far, I've always decided that it wouldn't. Last night, after you were both safely in bed, and your dad and I were too, we talked a little about why things felt so hard. We've both been working long, late days. It's a lot to adjust to for all of us. There are many perfectly valid and blameless reasons why each day feels like an endless provocation. He asked, "Is there anything I can do?" Yes, believe me. Believe that it's hard, that I don't want it to be this way, and that even when it looks like abject failure, I am trying. Let me be angry to you so I can be less angry to our kids. Let me tell you all the awful things I think about in my worst moments, and let me do it without fear that in doing so, I will lose my children. But instead, I told him, no, there's nothing you can do. I wish there was a happier ending. Love, Mama.
Mm. I can see what you mean by how articulate this piece is and how much you said in this about what it was really like naming, I've never hit you, but I've thought about it,
Yeah.
how close things were, and how you had what felt like maybe a bridge with your husband, but you, for whatever reason, didn't step on the bridge yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I couldn't take it.
Yeah, you couldn't take it.
Hmm.
Um, that's so heartbreaking that the words out of your mouth were, no, there's nothing you can
Yeah.
do. Now, returning to the question I asked you earlier, if you could go back in time and take that bridge, and someone said to you in one of your worst moments, is there anything I can do? And you knew that that person was being genuine, that they loved you, and
Hmm.
whatever you asked for, they would do. What is it that a person who sees someone struggling this way could do?
Well, I know what was done for me
Hmm.
when I did tell my best friend how I'd been
Yeah.
feeling. And I was so terrified to admit it.
Yeah.
She didn't treat it like an emergency.
Mm.
Not in the sense that like it wasn't a big deal. Obviously it was a big deal and she knew that and I could tell that she knew that, but she didn't treat it like something like this scandalous admission that I
Got
had
it.
made, right? She received it from me and she let me get all of it out. She treated it like it was real,
Mm.
but also like it was fixable.
Mm.
And she had experienced depression before, and I knew that. Um, and what she said to me was something along the lines of, so I just explained to her what I had been feeling, and she said, "Well, it sounds like you're depressed, and it sounds like the way that I felt when I was depressed." And then, I took medication and I went and talked to someone, and I felt better. It helped.
Mm.
It never occurred to me before that there was a fix
Yeah.
for what I was feeling.
Mm.
Like it did feel like it was a like a flaw in
Yeah.
my being, right? That was just part of who I was as a mom. And so I guess I never thought of it being like I never thought of it as an illness,
Mm.
and an illness can be treated.
Right.
She left me with this like very short but very important list of tasks that I needed to do, right? So she's like, as soon as you get home, you're going to call your mom and you're going to tell her like some version of what you told me, and you're going to ask her to come over. Because we lived in Vancouver at the time. My parents were on the island, so she had to take a ferry to come over, which she did. And then my best friend said, and then you're going to call your husband
Yeah.
and you're going to tell him some abridged version of what you told me, and you're going to tell him that you need help
Yeah.
and you need to go talk to a doctor and figure out what's going on
Mm.
and what your options are.
Hmm.
And so I did those two things. I called my mom, I called my husband, and then I called my doctor. And it's three phone calls,
Yeah.
and it took me a year and a half to get to a point where I could make those phone calls.
Yeah. But when you did you feel steady while you were doing those tasks? Or was it like the peak hardness, or had the peak already
Mm.
happened?
The peak had happened,
Yeah.
I think. Um, yeah, the peak hardness had happened, and then it was kind of like this was the ball rolling downhill
It was
at that point.
an exhale.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and that first instance of saying out loud, like, this is how I feel,
Yeah.
was like sort of probably also at the um the top of that curve. And then, I mean, at that point I felt like I was kind of I couldn't I couldn't go back
Yeah.
to what I had been doing before. First
Right.
of all, my best friend wouldn't have let
Yeah.
me be like, just kidding.
Yeah,
Like,
of
I know we
course.
had this incredibly dramatic, 2-hour talk as she's chasing my kids all around the sidewalk while I'm like having a panic attack.
Yeah.
Um, but so I had said it out loud. Nothing bad had happened. I think that was the other thing, was like the first time that I admitted that, it was received with like a great deal of care.
Yeah, of course.
And all of the fears that I had about telling someone, none of those came true. Of course, they didn't come true, right? But like, I had now a concrete example of like, you said this thing that you were sure was going to, bring down child protective services on your
Yeah.
family, right? But then the next time when I'm telling my mom, it's like a little tear in that blackout fabric of like, well, maybe people do just want to help. And I'm telling people that I love and that love me too, right? So um yeah, and
Yeah.
then it I was really fortunate that I was able to go and see my doctor so quickly. And he, to his credit, was he also received, my what I had been going through with great care. And he didn't make me jump through a bunch of hoops to try and like, well, maybe you should just try like deep breathing exercises or, whatever. Like, he must have been able to tell that this was not something that I was going to be able to fix on my own. So I was able to, get a prescription for some antidepressants very quickly. My mom came over. My husband took some time off work. And then his parents actually took our kids back to their place for a week. And so while I was like adjusting to this medication, it was just me at home. And it was one of the first times that I've been at home in my house since we'd had kids, which is something that I think I didn't realize was I would miss so much, like being alone in my own space. Um, so I had so many supports once I asked for it. And I remember at the time being like, why did it take me so long?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you can only get there as fast as you can get there, but it was so much better. It was
Hmm.
so much better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Saying that out loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear these the support and the safety and the care that you were given, and I'm so grateful for your bestie,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
husband, your mom, your doctor, and so proud of you for doing something that was so, so scary, taking that first step, jumping off that peak and
Hmm.
being like, I guess I hope someone will catch me.
Yeah.
And to know that you have those people in your life that will show up for you is so beautiful. And like, you're so deserving of it. And I'm just so grateful that that was your experience.
Dear E. While we were in Kelowna, you helped put A down for her nap a few times. And this is my son saying these things. Neither of us knows who said this to you. And you're such a good son. Someone must have said this to you while putting you to sleep. Your babysitter, maybe, your grandma. You say it to A, and I love you for it. I hope you know it's true. I hope you know you are such a good son too. Love, Mama.
Mm, wow. That's
Yeah.
so sweet. Yeah.
I know. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember writing the email. I don't remember that interaction happening.
Mm, yeah.
Um,
It was in the fog, but it was there. It's there
yeah,
enough that you wrote it down. I'm so glad you wrote all these down. That's
yeah, me too.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that are still writing the emails. So
Yeah, and less to the kids, more emails to myself. I was thinking about that the other day too, that
mm,
I should probably get back to it if I if I intend that to be like an ongoing thing. But
yeah.
it's different now though too, because I mean there's so much more. There's 7 and 9, so I mean we can have actual conversations
Yeah.
in the moment too, right? Which is like in a completely different dynamic from when they're
Yeah.
1 and 3.
Hmm. Well, and as your kids get older and you get deeper into your writing life and other, hobbies and interests and career moves and all that stuff, there'll be lots of other things to write towards
Yeah,
yourself too when your kids are that
yeah,
small and you're, primary caregiver, it sort of eclipses a
it
lot of the
does.
rest. And now
Yes.
maybe there's this opening for you to write about, I guess, anything you want.
Hmm.
What interests you now? What are you writing about these days?
I mean, I still feel like I'm writing basically the same half dozen poems, just in various formats, right? It's like motherhood and marriage and,
Yeah.
you know, existing in the world,
Yeah.
attempting to. Every once in a while, I get a garden poem,
Mhm.
which I
You've also,
really
every
enjoy.
once in a while, you get a political poem. I've seen
Yes,
some
yes, that
turning
is true
towards
too.
that as
Yeah,
well lately.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we would absolutely love to hear a poem. It can be any poem you want. If it's from both true, I wouldn't complain. Um, but as always on this podcast, sometimes people feel the need to say, I'm a much better writer now because again, a lot of the times we're reading stuff from these super cringy diaries we wrote when we were like 14. I always read, not every episode, but a lot of the time I read like a super I don't have any other word other than cringe. Like that's the only word that comes to mind because I'm doing the like A, B, C, D rhyme scheme. All of them, all of the poems are so devastating. Yeah, it's they're hard to read. And I feel obligated to be like, I'm much better at poetry now.
I
Um,
promise.
but to be honest, these emails that you read, even though you're not trying to write a poem, and they're not, they could be poems, but like they're more, they really truly do feel like this inner narrative just kind of coming out on the page as a
Mm,
journal entry in the form of a letter. But I think they're beautiful, and I think hearing you read them today was like obviously an emotional experience for you, but for me as well, just again hearing the, it's an odd thing to be like, wow, she's so talented while I'm listening to these like really difficult moments that you're just walking us through. But um, this is maybe the first time on the podcast that I haven't been like, just so you all know, she's a much better writer now because I think they're all great. But obviously, the poems that you had published with Button Poetry in your book, Both True, are just beautiful, beautiful pieces of work. And I think each poem on its own stands alone as an amazing poem. And I think the way you put this collection together is so clever. And I'm somebody who reads so much poetry for work, but also for pleasure. I'm always, again, trying to turn my editing brain off when I'm reading something for pleasure, but it's hard because I'm like, I would have done it this way.
yeah.
But with your book, I really was able to sink into it as an experience of just reading a book as someone who loves reading poetry.
Mm,
So thank you so much for bringing
thank
this work
you.
into the world and for reading so much of your other writing today on the podcast and for having this really beautiful, open, honest, hard at times conversation with me today. I know the listeners are just gonna absolutely love it. So
No, it was my
thank you
pleasure.
so
Thank you
much.
for inviting me.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear one of your poems.
Okay. I actually might read a new one,
Oh,
if
yay.
that's
Awesome.
okay.
Of course. Would love that.
So, I I worked on this one for quite a while. This this feeling of like I feel so much more raw as a mom than I ever did
Hmm.
before. And like everything in the world is like harder and more beautiful and more like fleeting, and it's just all more. So I actually got some suggestions from other writer friends, mostly of like, what are the things that just feel so tender to you to put in this poem? And I called it, I had a baby, and now anything will make me cry.
Hmm.
Rainbow flag in the barber's window, my husband's winnowing grays, an old dog, a new tooth, dark water. Last tree morning, a clear cut. The smell of pancakes, a shared birthday, small forgotten socks. Any song cresting over a minor cliff, jam the color of a split lip. Imagining another baby or never having another baby. All the ways the world threatens to take the baby I do have. Strangers in every crowded coffee shop, at every intersection, all of them, someone else's child, waving us across the road, holding the door. It doesn't take much. Once caught with the baby in the rain, a car waiting through a green light, the driver watching us to be sure we get all the way safely inside.
Woo! Snaps and also complete goosebumps covering just the right side of my body. I don't know what that means, but
Right-sided
oh,
tingles.
that's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, I love the a condensed list poem. I love what you're doing at the beginning with like short and then long and then short. It just has this, it feels like it's breathing, feels like breath.
Mm,
And that ending is oh, stunning. Absolutely stunning. Wow, I feel so honored that we got to hear a new poem. And for anybody out there who's listening who wants to hear some of the other poems that we've been talking about, I will share all the information about where you can get Kristina's beautiful book, Both True, published with Button Poetry. How's the launch going? How are you feeling about your book being out in the world?
good. Yeah,
Good, yeah.
it's I don't know what I was expecting, but life just goes on around it, you know?
Yeah,
I think that
yeah.
that's kind of the theme of it's the theme of a lot of things, but the theme of being a parent especially is like
Yeah.
Everything else just carries on.
Yeah.
But it's been really fun to do. I've had a chance to do a few um, not like chats like this and a couple of readings. I had my
Yeah.
first live reading on Friday, which was very exciting,
Oh, cool.
like in person. And yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
so gratifying to hear people react to something that's react positively to something that's so personal.
Of course. Yeah.
Um, and I think actually one of the most interesting and unexpected reactions that I've heard is from folks who aren't parents themselves, but who have read it and felt like it gave them a different angle on their parents and what
Oh.
their parents might have been maybe not experiencing. Well, I mean, who knows, but like how it might have felt for their parents when
Mm.
they were very small.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually I mean, that's beautiful too. It's another bridge.
Hmm.
It's a bridge between an adult that's still maybe open or seeking healing before they even know that's what it is
Hmm. Hmm.
that they want, you know. And that's for me, that's one of my favorite things about poetry. And it doesn't have to be a poem about something profound. It can be a poem about the car that you saw that's like waiting for you at the green light, right? Like it can be,
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's not something big because it is. That's why you write a poem about it because you're making something
Hmm.
small into something
Hmm.
important, right? But I really love that. I love that there's this other angle
Yeah.
of how these poems and this conversation around postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, and just what it means to become a parent and to struggle through that and to still love your kids. That there's this whole other. I'm surprised that I didn't think of that, but I think when I was reading your book, I was like so immersed in the world of just getting to understand this this particular pain like
Hmm.
better, you know, and getting to see you better through your work, I think was where my focus was on. But that's really interesting. I might read the book again and knowing that. I honestly might. It's one of my prized possessions on my shelf. So again, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us about it.
I've talked about it a lot. I mean, this is now almost, we're coming up on 6 years, right, since I started
Yeah.
treating it. So it's longer since I was in it. Um, I've talked about it a lot with my family. I've talked it with a therapist. I was on medication for a while, then I was off, then I was back on for a bit. Um, I have talked about it with my kids in obviously much less specific
Yeah.
terms, but we have talked about, what it means when we call it your brain playing a trick on you, right? Your brain telling you this thing that is not true. Um, and and like you said, writing has been
Mm.
a huge part of that.
Do you feel like you are on the other side of this now?
I do. Yeah, for the most part, I do.
Mm. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for listening to the Angsty Pod today. As always,